It was the year 802,701 AD. They were the first creatures I set my eyes on, these fragile dolls of futurity, the beautiful, childlike Eloi. They spoke in a strange, sweet, and liquid tongue, their eyes large and mild, mouths small, and their little chins ran to a point. As I grew to know them, the Eloi spent all their time playing gently, eating fruits and sleeping. It came into my head while observing the ease and security at which they lived in, that there was no necessity of an efficient family. In fact, the specialization of the sexes had all but disappeared through the generations. In costume, and without all the differences of texture and bearing that in our age mark off the sexes from one another, these people of the future were alike. But of the multitude of Eloi, one remained in my interest, little Weena. Through her devotion, I learned to cherish her in our short time together. Through childlike actions, she conveyed affection and followed me wherever I went. She would occasionally dart off to the side and pick flowers whose destination was my pockets. For some reason, my pockets had always puzzled Weena. She finally concluded that they were some sort of eccentric vase for floral decoration. By watching her actions, I learned about the true fear of this new world. Her dread of the dark, shadowy places led me to fear them as well, despite being a rational human being. Darkness to her was the one thing that was absolutely dreadful. I remember wondering what their fear originated from. Intuition had me believe that this fear was somehow related to the oddness of the deep wells, but exactly how, I did not yet know. I could only contemplate what was hidden in their depths at the foot of the shafts. Instinctively, I loathed them. There was an altogether sickening quality about the Morlocks that belonged only to them, something dreadfully inhuman and malign. In this dreaded dark, I came across the other species. If the Eloi were beautiful, the Morlock were damned souls. A solitary, white, ape-like creature that seemed to be like that of a human spider. Quite plainly, this second species of man was subterranean. However, no human aspect was left, with their pale, chinless faces and great, lidless, pinkish-gray eyes. Their eyes watched me from the darkness. I heard the throb and hum of a machinery pumping fresh air down the well. Despite this, the faint halidus of the freshly shed blood could be smelt on the wind. Out of the darkness, great shapes, like those of big machines, rose out of the dimness. They cast grotesque black shadows in which dim spectral Morlocks sheltered from the dim glare. Some way down from the central vista, laid with what seemed to be a meal of whatever large animal could have survived to furnish the red joint I saw. I thought of the great fear that was between the two species, and for the first time came the clear knowledge of what the meat I had seen might be. It was the year 802,701 AD. Let all traditions, aspirations, even the mere memory of man as I knew him, have been swept out of existence, and left in their place frail creatures, one who had forgotten their own high ancestry and the white things of terror. With horror, I had come to realize these humanoid creatures were less human than our own cannibal ancestors. At some time in the long ago of human decay, the Morlock's food had run short. His prejudice against human flesh was no deep-seated instinct either, and when other meat failed them, well, they turned to what old habit had hitherto forbidden. The poor Elois were mere fattened cattle, which the ant-like Morlocks preserved and preyed upon. Man had been content to live in ease and delight while riding upon the labors of his fellow man. I understood then that, like the cattle, the Eloi knew of no enemies and provided against no needs, and their end was the same. So the upper-world man had drifted toward his feeble prettiness, and the underworld to mere mechanical industry. What, unless biological science is a mass of errors, is the cause of human intelligence and vigor, hardship and freedom, conditions under which the active, strong, and subtle survive and the weaker go to the wall? We are kept keen on the grindstone of pain and necessity, and it seemed to me that there was that hateful grindstone broken at last. I grieved to think how brief the dream of the human intellect had been. It had committed suicide. It had set itself steadfastly toward comfort and ease. It had attained its hopes, to come to this at last. And a great quiet followed.